How have you been? Can't hear you. You're muted, I think.
Hear me?
Now I can hear you.
Oh, okay.
Have you been okay? Have you been well?
Okay.
Okay.
Just been busy.
Okay. Miss Kent.
Hello, sir.
And
Hello, ma'am. Good to see you.
good to see everyone. So I'm going to make you as host. You have an hour and a half for your meeting before quality of life starts at
I
7.
think it's a perfect follow-up to bylaws is quality of life.
You know, if this goes more than an hour and a half, the quality of my life is going to be greatly diminished.
Yes.
Oh yeah. Well, I try not to. That's kind of a maximum for us because we just get sort of spent dealing
Okay.
with it.
I'm going to go get some Diet Coke. I'll see you later.
Okie dokie.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm going
make me host and then we're good to go. And I mean, I don't know what happens afterwards. I mean, I just end the meeting when I end the meeting.
Right. You end the meeting. If you can, let me know so I can start the quality of life meeting because I
Okay.
can't start if your meeting doesn't end.
No, absolutely. I mean, I'm going to be cutting everybody off. Should we, and I don't expect it to run until 6:30, I will stop my meeting. But
Mhm.
should I just send you an email or what? Or you're not going to be on?
Oh, yeah, I have to be on. I have to start the quality life meeting. So yeah, I'll be looking at my email.
Okay. I will definitely I will let you know.
Okay.
And if we end early, you know, like if it only runs a little over an hour and we're finished, then you would know automatically that we're done.
Yes.
Okay.
Eva, I can text you when we're done.
Okay, perfect.
I'll just do that.
Thank you.
I know that makes it easier. Then you don't have to.
Check my email.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Okay. Have a good meeting.
Thank you. Oh man. Has it been a long day or what? So it is 5:32. Okay. So wait for. Let's see if this is just perfect. Oh, there's Matt. Okay. Let me guess, no one's going to show up there. It's like they've all got better things to do and we're not going to have a quorum. Famous last words, I know.
David has proxy powers, right? That's in the bylaws.
Oh yeah, not all right.
Can you promote Natasha
Oh, absolutely.
and John Paul?
Okay.
If you want to make me a co-host, I can do that while you're leading the meeting.
That would be fine. Okay, and I will make you a co-host, Kylie.
Katie, are you around tonight? I'd like to have a chat. Are you available?
Katie's desperately looking for a reason she doesn't have to get on the phone with you, David.
I appreciate that.
Well, she can now talk.
She's not the only one.
Um,
Are you around, Lita? Katie?
Okay, here. Yeah, I am. I just
Yeah.
got, my phone just got connected in.
I was going to call Matt, but I took some medicine and it didn't kick in yet.
Yeah, I was going to say you felt better, the voices stopped.
Significantly worse. Okay.
Rich,
Well-
raise your hand if you want to be promoted to panelist. Otherwise, I'll just allow you to talk. Oh, he's right, joining.
I actually promoted John and
Yeah.
Natasha, so you will be fully able to participate. And we got Rich too. Oh, good. Cool. It's great. Just let's give it another minute or two. We've got who are we still waiting for? Oh, Michael.
He said
Right.
he wasn't able to make it.
He was going to
right?
be late.
You're right. You're absolutely right. He did say he was going to be late. So we do have everyone here. And I think it would be good to get started. And thank you all for coming. I appreciate our other board members who are not members of the committee for attending. And whether you have something that you want to bring up or not, by all means, we're here to listen and discuss whatever your concerns are. I'm going to start with we had comments from two of our members who were unable to come. First, let's deal with Chenault's, which was an issue. I don't think it's controversial, but it's an issue, where a committee chair who has a conflict and who doesn't hear, who is not going to chair a portion of a committee. Currently, the draft says that if committee chair has to recuse themselves from chairing that portion of the committee, they're actually going to recuse themselves from chairing the full meeting. And Chenault suggested that that a chair only recuse themselves from chairing the portion of the committee of the meeting that they have a conflict. So we've got hands up already. Terrific. Carter, why don't you go ahead?
That's a COIB directive.
Say it again, Carter.
It's a COIB, Conflict of Interest Board
Oh,
states
CLB.
that you can't chair a meeting if you're recusing on an individual item. And that's because of the prerogative of the chair of a meeting to control other aspects of the meeting. So it's COIB has stated that you have to recuse from the whole meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
So that's
I
not going to be determined.
Makes it easy.
Makes
Yeah.
it easy way. Matt,
I'd be interested. I do think we want to start documenting, like, if it is a COIB, and I don't doubt that it is, we probably want to know which COIB directive it is so that we can point to it.
well,
So like a footnote.
Well, it doesn't have to be in the footnote. I just wanted if we're going to tell somebody that it's because of the COIB, I want us to be able to say it's because of the COIB and you can read it here.
Yeah.
I will look that up and I will share that with everybody. And assuming that is true, and that's probably where I got that from. I just don't recall offhand. But if that's the case, what I will do is simply share that with everybody, and therefore the text will remain as is, because our hands are tied. And in fact, it's probably it was added to make it clear to people that that's going to be a requirement, because it's not, it's not intuitive. I mean, yes, it's intuitive that a chair would recuse themselves from a portion of the meeting, but not necessarily from the entire meeting. So I will look into that and I will get back to everybody and we'll just take it from there. And assuming that it is in fact a requirement, that's sort of what resolves it. this, let's see, we also, now, Matt, you had.
Wait a
two-
minute, chapter 68 of the city charter, it's in. Is that what
I
you said,
didn't give
Howard?
you I didn't give you a citation. I'm gonna look that up. And I'm going to send around an email to everyone who's here. And this way we will all be informed, on what the actual requirement is. So, but I'm going to assume, I mean, nobody makes this up. So I'm assuming Carter is correct. And so that's.
Really, I
so-
think huge quantities of people in our line of work make things up.
Yeah, well, I think it's too easy. It would be a bad lie. Let's put it that way.
Oh, I don't, no, I don't think it's a lie. I don't think, to be clear, I don't think Carter or anybody else here is lying. I'm just saying, I think that telephone has a way of muddling legal definitions.
Yeah,
That's my.
no, that's why I want to confirm it, and I will put
Okay.
whatever the citation is into an email. I will circulate it to everyone who's here. And this way, and if need be, we can always add, whether it's a footnote or a reference, a parenthetical reference, so that people understand why it's there. If that's what makes them comfortable, that's fine. But moving on to our next, now, Matt, I know that you had two small points that you wanted to, suggestions. So why don't we deal with those? Because I think the last thing that we have, which is Susanna's, which is, I can see was going to have sort of a passionate reaction. People will have a passionate reaction to. I would like to deal with the other more straightforward things first. So Matt, why don't you tell us about the 2 points that you wanted to raise?
And these are just for framing purposes. Neither of these are hills that I'm dying on. These are kind of separate from any of the topics we've discussed somewhat, and therefore don't need to be in this draft and don't need to be something new for board members to see unless we want it to. But it was the first, and they're totally separate. The first is encouraging the naming of vice chairs on each committee. And it doesn't have to be a requirement. It just, it can be encouraging vice chairs.
Are you saying
and
that,
with
is that by the
sorry,
chair
go
of the committee or by the chair of the board?
I defer to this group. I don't have a preference, kind
Well,
of as
I
long
think-
as
I believe
I
the
think
chair
it's
of
the
the
chair of the
board
board.
does it with.
The chair of the board
obviously,
does do it.
You want to make sure the committee chair agrees.
That's
That's
right.
the way the bylaws currently read it. It's, I
Yeah.
mean, all appointments are to the chair, but the chair is supposed to consult with the committee chair.
It shouldn't be the committee chair.
And so it's, I don't know if unless there's a reason to change that, but the point is to really make an effort to
I
have
agree with that,
chairs
yeah.
on all of our committees. If you want to explain, your thinking behind that, Matt, I mean, I support it personally, but if you want to explain your thinking on that.
I see Denise hand up.
Oh,
So
I'm just
Oh,
gonna
I'm
say
sorry.
I fully support it too, because I think we need to do, there's a couple things. As chair, I want to get vice chairs for all the committees, and I also want to get people who are longtime chairs spreading resolution writing among committee members, not even vice chairs, because we need to build up the expertise of the board. And I know sometimes, some of us can whip out resolutions. Actually, there's no such thing as whipping out a resolution. It always takes time, but it always takes time to train, more time to train someone, but you benefit long-term. And I think we just need to put more emphasis on that.
see if I wait, my
Someone-
points are made for me. Donna's in the
Oh,
Thank you.
I have promoted her to panelist, but maybe she's away from her computer and has not, she just accept. So she hasn't rejected it, but she might be.
There she goes.
there she is.
Oh, there she is. Okay.
There
Thank
she
you.
goes. Welcome.
Take 3.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think it's just a smart move to have, and this is something that our board needs to do, which is really encourage more development among a wider swath of our membership so that we can, share the work. And okay, does anybody have any other comments on that? Otherwise, I will ask you, Matt, what your second point was.
I guess I have one.
Oh, go ahead, Katie.
Are we putting it into the bylaws, or Is it going to be more in a best practices document? I mean, what I totally agree with the suggestion, and I think it's particularly important with the you know, the looming issue of term limits. This would be a good antidote to that issue, you know, the problem that we're going to be grappling with. But does this belong in the bylaws, or is it belong somewhere else?
Well, like a lot of things, there's maybe a reference in the bylaws, but how it gets played out is sort of a practice in just, this is just a practical matter. There is a current reference to vice chairs, but we can strengthen the language, you know, and put in, you know, in order to promote development, we can put in something of that, you know, language in terms of goal-oriented language to just strengthen that. I mean, we don't have to make it a requirement that every committee have one, but it's, you know, there's nothing wrong with just the way we have in certain places, you know, there's a certain phrase that will indicate the reasoning behind something. We can add that as well. So I
Okay,
think that's
thank
what
you.
Matt is talking about, because he's not asking for it as an absolute requirement. He's looking for it to be encouraged.
Mhm.
Okay,
So
Okay.
that being, Janine, your hand is up.
Janine, you
I
muted.
was just gonna say, for example, arts and institutions, we have a new chair, IB Kwan Arsa. And while Robin Rothstein has no official role, she's no longer chair of that committee. She's sort of in a coaching, unofficial role in terms of coaching. And, you know, would make sense for me to appoint a vice chair, but, you know, it's sort of, you know, and I would like to, but like some of these committees are smaller, and so it takes longer to find something. I mean, just given the human resources of it, we've got, you know, like the answer is yes, I want to have a vice chair of that committee, but the first step is making sure the new chair is fully up to speed. And we unofficially have the former chair helping.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Can't we just say that all committees should have a chair and vice chair? You know,
Right. Well, you
Yeah.
can't, you know, you can't, if there's nobody on a committee that's prepared to accept the role.
that's
you
why
Yeah,
the
I
word
mean, that,
should.
yeah. As
So
for some of these
it-
smaller committees that don't meet as often, that may be the case.
That
So-
may be the case.
So hence the
So-
word.
So it's
David's
really
language
about,
contemplates that.
exactly. And Matt, if you want
Calm
to
down,
provide
Matt.
specific language, or I will add something for people's review and consideration. Matt, Michael, please.
Yes, hi, I'm sorry I'm joining late. I just came from a dental appointment and my mouth is Novocaine, so please forgive how I talk. I know I must sound like a monster. May I just ask, which subjects have we covered already? And again, I apologize for being late.
Oh, no, we were just, we first dealt with Chenault's, you know, he had the email that I had sent you. He
Right,
had
I
a
saw that.
concern about why, you know, a chair would have to recuse themselves from an entire meeting. And it was pointed out that COIB regulations require that a chair actually, if they have to recuse themselves from part of a meeting, they must be recused from the entire meeting.
Understood.
Said that I was going to check on that, and I will inform everyone here, you know, I will provide you with the citation. So, and that's probably, you know, it's quite possible that's where that language came from, and, you know, people just don't recall off the top of their heads. So that's what we dealt with. We're now talking about, Matt had two suggestions, the first one being something to sort of further strengthen or encourage the promoting vice chairs in all of our committees. And that's what we're talking about now.
Thank you.
No problem. And if there's nothing else on that subject, I mean, I will draft language, or, you know, and I will, and people can just, you know, comment on it. Done. So, Matt, your second.
Second one will hopefully be equally non-contentious, if that's a word, which is just in a couple places we talk about letters, whether that's letters of the board, letters by committees, or letters by letters by the chair, letters by the committees, letters by the executive committee. And just that a carbon, it's funny, the language says that a carbon copy will be sent to the borough president and the relevant elected officials, but it doesn't say a carbon copy will be sent to the board. And so I thought it would be a good idea if we get a copy in our minutes, not an approval or anything, just a copy of any letter sent from the board, the chair, or the executive committee. Those were the two non-contentious ones.
Okay. I don't know. Makes sense that we should be copied on everything. And it should be officially, it should be a requirement. Anybody have anything to say on that? Yes, Carter.
When does an email become a letter? When does a communication become a letter? Because there's a lot of informal communications that go on things, and particularly with committee chairs and dealing with agencies, et cetera. And so I think that that needs to be defined if you're going to have a requirement that certain things need to be sent. So that would not have been an issue 10 years ago, I don't think. But today that is an issue, since those communications regularly happen via email.
Right.
So it may be an official letter of the board, or
Is it something on letterhead?
some language.
Oh, I guess we're talking about things that would be like on letterhead, something that is an official, not. I see Matt's head shaking. So
that's what I thought of it. That's how I thought of it, at least. Like somebody is signing at the bottom with, chair CB2.
So over time, just to put in perspective, a lot of times they're follow-up letters, right? There are other things on previous actions, or saying what has happened, so it even within that, it's out of context when you do sometimes presents letters. So it's just, it create, by opening that door, you create some other doors of whatever that may be. So I'm not saying don't keep them for the record. I'm just saying as they get shared, it's just that we're following up on XYZ, has there been any movement, that not unusual? And certainly I'm sure that'll be happening more and more, and with the current administration. But I just point that out because of the contextual nature of some stuff.
No, it's a totally valid concern, because we don't want somebody to be tripped up because they didn't. There wasn't this submission, and maybe that just requires more thought about what are we talking about specifically. Rich, please.
I just want to make sure I understand, Matt. Do I only see the reference to the word letter one time in the document? Is it specifically around the officers of the board 3-6? Is that what we're talking about? Where else is it referenced?
What are you specifically talking about?
So,
And it may be something that's not. Go ahead.
Yeah, to a certain extent, I'm not sure that all of it would be in here. That there's a place that I would want just to add the words and and CC the board. The place that I was thinking of specifically was. This is 3BI5, 3BI5, page 4, and I can read it.
Yes, please do.
Under roles of duties of the chair, number 5, to represent and stand for the board and perform all necessary functions according to decisions duly made by the board, including communicating with government agencies. Such communication shall be sent directly to the appropriate government agency with a copy of the same simultaneously forwarded to the borough president's office and any other pertinent state, city, or federal office or elected official's office. That was the place where it caught my attention that we were CCing a bunch of people, but not us. But it would be letters from the board don't really exist except for resolutions. So it would be letters of the chair, letters of the executive committee. Katie, do you might not be persuaded by my point, and I'm interested. Do you think there letters from the board could occur outside of resos?
I would ask Janine and Carter and David if they agree with that. Letters from the board, or is it just letters from the chair committee, the board chair?
There's all kind, I mean, you know,
Yeah.
there's
I
all
mean-
ways of that stuff originating.
Yeah. As a committee chair, I sent letters relating to the Bleecker School with whoever was chair at the time to elected officials, reinforcing our position and our opinion from previous resolutions. As a board member, I've written letters for previous chairs, and then also one that I signed for the affordability at 21 Spring Street. We've written a letter on 2 Howard. I mean, those are the ones that I've written and been involved in. They're either reinforcing the resolutions that the board has passed or have been voted on at exec committee or full board. We also wrote one this year supporting CB1's position on the jail. So those are just some recent examples. But they've all gone to either exec or full board. They've been on letterhead. In terms of emails, I mean, I've sent emails to elected officials with like briefing materials on topics. You know, sometimes
Yeah.
so that it's more of a briefing material. So I'll defer to the other people raising their hands.
Well, Carter, as a former chair.
Yeah, you know, I was going to say a lot of this goes to an evolution in what gets included in the board package each month. And if you go back in time, you have different materials that have been included within, but those packages are generally produced by the office. So I think that what Matt, you know, a lot of what you're asking for is it's like the silent things, right? So it's like the silent committee reports that aren't voted on. So you have a committee report, it doesn't get included in the package. And in many respects, a lot of this is more a directive of what the office is producing for the board and not so much a bylaws matter. We used to also include, like in the board minutes, all the written stuff that was submitted. We don't have that anymore, so much anymore as a package. And a lot of that was because it was photocopied and put in an envelope and given to all of us, which may have predated your time. So you could include all this random stuff in there, flyers, you know, from other organizations. So as we went to more of a digital format, a lot of that stuff was dropped just from a technology perspective of people not scanning the things and including it in one PDF. So I think that a lot of this might be revisited as office policies when there's a new district manager about putting together materials for the board each month, back to what the spirit of that envelope and what went in there. And of course, there are also anonymous letters at some point that ended up in those packages that caused a lot of controversy too. But the envelope was, I think, addresses a lot of what you're kind of getting at about just actions that have occurred through the course of the month.
Valerie.
Thanks. You know, as far as, you know, I really appreciate the transparency. I support anything that makes what we do transparent. I just, to Carter's point, and is where does the onus fall to trigger the inclusion, being it the committee chair, the board chair, the board staff, and then just knowing what that day is like from an administrative perspective on the staff, and knowing that our staff is going to go down to one very shortly, of remembering what to include in that full board packet. I mean, from September, you know, we voted on the June and July full board minutes, as well as the August executive committee resolutions, but none of that was included in the board packet. And so I just, I just worry that we put something in that just administratively just can't be implemented. But I do believe in the transparency and the fact that once there's a district manager, that might be the role for that to fit in to increase that transparency and through a process.
Okay. Yeah. Rich, please.
It was specifically around the term letters. And we use the term communications in a more general sense throughout the document. So I think letters are a specific thing. I think communications a much broader term. And it wasn't so much in that area around results of the board meeting. What I feel some exposure on in committees is a broader communications, and it's not even after the fact. It's like prepping for meetings or speaking to groups that are going to present at meetings or might be or might want to comment on meetings. I think there's a bit of work that goes on behind the scenes that I've always felt is necessary to set up the meeting efficiently. But I feel when we have to, it's not the sort of communications in the broader sense that I feel need to be shared with everybody. So for example, we have, I'll give you a live example right now. It's part of the reason I joined. We have this meeting coming up next week about pickleball, and if there are parents groups that are upset, and there are pickleball players who want things, and to get the meeting to be effective and perhaps efficient in terms of coming up with some ideas. There, I feel a need to communicate with the various groups and with the Parks Department, and with the council member, and with the. I don't think that's wrong. I don't think that's not transparent enough. And I've always wondered, and there's sort of difference of opinions on that, of whether or not that's our role as committee chairs, if that's acceptable. That was the broader sense. So when I was looking for letters, letters and emails and phone calls, they're all under the realm of communications. That was really the broader sense. Matt's question was really just the catalyst for the reason the question I wanted to raise today.
Yeah. Yeah, I think this is definitely going to require a more refined definition so that it becomes functional, and that we're both able to provide what our members want to see. And at the same time, it's got to be realistic, because we can't hamstring the everyday operations. Janine.
I just want to clarify that the letters I was referring to are on CB2 letterhead. They're always signed by a chair and sometimes signed by the relevant committee chair. So it's not committee chair correspondence with the city agency, which happens all the time, or chair. So it's this formal letter on the letterhead. And, yes, maybe an email is, emails are like, hey, I want to share this information with you. I also want to share that, an interim solution, and I'm sure we'll come up with a better one, that we implemented just a few months ago, is, people can send letters to the board. People always have sent letters to the CB2 board at full board meeting. And, I've been in situations where somebody's like, oh, this person sent a letter, can you read it? I'm like, well, if I'm going to read this person's letter, I have to read all of them. So now we have an electronic way of submitting letters. And obviously we still receive letters by hand. So the last several months, when we receive letters, we have a Google document that we share with the board members. They can look at the number of letters. I think in terms of the largest quantity we received were relating to the homeless shelter. We also received a box of petitions, which we took a photo of and shared over Zoom. So I think there needs to be, in terms of the quantity and the quality, that we've been doing a better job using technology to share that information. The downside of that is what I've seen is people who show up to the full board meeting are now also submitting a letter, which is not what it's, like you can't do both. You got to pick one. But that's, I do think that's important to just have more transparency, because I wouldn't want, oh, Matt really knows the chair well, and so he's going to send a letter in and Janine's going to read it, or Susan Kent's going to read it. Valerie's letter, nobody's ever heard of her, it's her first board meeting, doesn't get read. And historically, those would only be passed to the committee chairs, and they would pass them. And I think that does a disservice to our board to understand where the input's coming from.
Okay, Katie.
This seems somewhat reminiscent of what I'm going to listen to in an hour or so about documents and who has custody of documents and where are they. It still seems a little Mar-a-Lago-ish, but I think it's an important it's an important topic, and I appreciate Matt's bringing it up, and I appreciate that Rich came to talk to us about it, because it's certainly top of mind, not just for us, but in general. And I want to think about it more deeply. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Carter.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, by meeting virtually, and this isn't to Matt's point about the letters, but the virtual aspect disallows people just to hand out stuff, which is what used to occur on anytime we had a contentious stuff. Things were just handed out to board members. And I think that the collecting the letters to share with board members is sort of a first step. As somebody who's looked extensively through our archives, we have kept information differently over the years, going back to the 80s, 90s, 2000s. It's like it's different. But the biggest thing is now it's easy to collect all that stuff and put it in a file. November 2022 full board meeting materials, and everything that was handed in goes in there. And it's relevant when you look back in time, because it gives a lot more information, and that includes the committees that didn't meet, because those reports don't go into the full board minutes. They're cataloged separately, and if you look on our website, they're in a separate section. So a lot of this is just putting it all together, including the letters that go out on letterhead. So all that stuff's in a place that records all the activities of that's everything.
Yeah, we have that ability to do that. So it's getting late, and I think.
But not now. That is not going to happen. Let's just be clear, not now. We do not have that ability at the moment from a staffing.
We have
perspective.
high-speed scanners, actually, but we do. We own
Well,
them.
I think we can say that if something is currently going to be copied, if various agencies or electeds are CC'd, that part of that same CC list should be us. So it's not a question of the board changing what gets copied. It's just making sure that that list that is already being copied will now include our board members as a matter, as an official. This way, they're going to be getting whatever the electeds and the agencies get, and that, but we're not increasing the burden to therefore provide copies of every single email, informational or what otherwise. So I will make an adjustment like that. Everyone should look at it and then see if it adequately reflects what your goal is, and we'll take it from there.
Thank you.
No problem. No, so these are the kind of nuances that just we don't appreciate sometimes, and that's why it's great to have people come and talk about them. And so if there's nothing else that you have to bring up, let's talk about.
I was going to suggest eliminating term limits for the chair. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay, come on, it's late. Let's get going.
Yeah, I thought that was funny.
Please, this is a hard enough job. So let's now bring up Susanna's, which you, not everyone here has received it. It was for those of you who are here who did not.
Let me share it with everyone who's not here
Thank
while
you.
you're addressing it.
I appreciate that. Thank you. What Susanna Aaron had sent me an email. She, the current draft that we have prepared guarantees that a board member who attends a committee meeting has a right to participate in the discussion during the committee's business session. Does not have the right to vote, but does have the right to participate in discussion. This was something that the committee felt strongly about, and it was a change. The current bylaws give discretion to the chair whether or not to allow it. And what our proposed change is that it would give a board member who's attended a right to participate. Now, she disagreed with that, and she elaborated on her reasoning for that. So Janine is going to share with all of you who have not received a copy of that, what her explanation is, but we did have some strong feelings on that. And so, Michael, please start.
Okay, let me start. And again, I apologize if my voice is strange from the.
We can hear you quite clearly, don't worry.
Good, because it sounds strange to me. When we discussed this in committee, it was very clear to so many of us that encouraging board members to attend committee meetings is a good thing, because board members get to see and hear a lot of issues. That's one of the reasons I joined a community board, to learn as much as possible about my community. And when it came to the discussion of a subject matter, members of the public can speak first, and then committee members can question them. But we also said board members can talk at that point too. When it came to business session, we said board members who are not committee members should have the ability to speak toward what is going to be discussed in business session, whether it's a report or whether it's a resolution, because it will save time at the full board meeting. And I think that was a major consideration. Most of the work should be done in committee and should not be rehashed again at the full board. So if full board members have the opportunity to speak during business session, a lot of issues can be resolved, recommendations can be taken, and there can be a more brief discussion at the full board meeting. We in this committee had agreed that that was a good idea. And what would happen in business session is that board members who are committee members would speak first, and then board members who are not committee members would also be given the option to speak. And then that would save us time at the full board meeting. What Susanna is recommending is just the opposite, that it be only at the discretion of the chair. And I know, and I'm speaking personally now, from my own personal experience at certain committee meetings, when it came to business session, I was told by the chair of the committee, we don't have time to take questions or issues or discussion from board members who are not a member of this committee. And I felt a bit slighted, because I had devoted an hour and a half, 2 hours of my time to understanding the issues that came up at the committee meeting, which I thought were very important. And then I was not allowed to speak during the business session at which decisions were being made. And then by the time the full board meeting came, some of those issues kind of disappear. So I restate what I said in an email to everyone on this committee who had received Susanna's recommendation, that I am opposed to that change. I am opposed to making it at the discretion of the committee chair, and I would like to leave it that way, that board members have the full opportunity to speak after board members who are committee members at a committee meeting. I think it really works well to the benefit of all of us, and it saves time in the full board meeting. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you. Eloquently said. David.
Yeah, issues that we have in front of us are not like tightly bound and segmented. I mean, there are issues, with parks that have maybe lap over to land use issues. There are issues with landmarks that, could be affected, land use or parks or transportation. And I think it's helpful that if a committee member from other committees come and could add insight and discussion into the business section, I see no harm in doing that. And so I am for leaving it the way it is. I do understand Susan Aaron's position on it, but I think we should just leave it and just have a free flow discussion with people in the business section. No votes, but a discussion is allowed, in my opinion.
Nobody's suggesting a vote. I mean, that would sort of undermine the role of the committee. Katie.
It has been my long-standing experience that if you take the time to go to another committee meeting and you have some expertise, you're always treated politely and asked to, participate. And particularly if it's, something that a little bit about because you're bringing in a view from another committee or from your neighborhood, I've found that the committees are welcome that. welcome that input. So I've a little bit, you know, I don't understand where this comes from, because I've thought it's been very polite and collegial, allowing this interchange and flow.
Well, I cannot speak for Susanna. I would assume that it is coming from a personal experience of having board members show up at a particular meeting and her feeling that she wasn't in control of her meeting or something to that effect. It's I think it is driven by personal experience. Unfortunately, Susanna did tell me that she wasn't going to be able to attend, but you know, and she certainly has a right, you know, I hope if she, you know, disagrees with the committee, that she will bring this up when this, you know, when this comes up for a vote, whether or not to approve it. Janine.
Before, when I was a new board member, I attended to do exactly what Katie did, and share information about a topic that I was more familiar with than others. And I've done that, you know, in various committees over the years. Typically what has happened, and I'm okay with this, is first the committee members go and then the non-committee members go in terms of commenting. And, you know, if there's lots of comments, you know, if Susan's a committee member, she has a second comment, she would go first for the second round before the non-committee members. So I do think it's fine to have a priority in terms of who discusses, but not, and I think Rich does a good job of that at Parks as well, but not to exclude it, but to first prioritize committee members to share their thoughts first, and then go back around if you have seconds.
Yeah, and just to be clear, no one is suggesting, this does no way suggest that a chair loses the ability on how to manage the meeting, how to organize it, how to prioritize who gets to speak first, and who, you know, how many times. It is simply a basic right of participation. And that would remain, you know, the chair would certainly always have input on that. David.
Yeah, but it's true. I just want to echo, I was going to say that, you know, if it gets out of hand, the committee chair could put a 1 minute time limit on. They could do a lot of things if it gets out of hand. But I think that board members should be allowed to talk in business sections. Okay, I said, I want you to congratulate me for my short, terse comments.
Your brevity is
I'm a
always
brevist.
appreciated. Absolutely. Carter.
Yeah, you know, I just want to go to something Matt had said, you know, in one of his emails. You know, other boards have the entire board act as a committee in other areas. So for example, there are certain boards that the land use committee is in fact the full board, because they don't consider those actions very often. So the fear of too many people participating is sort of the antithesis of what we're doing here, because we're all appointed for our knowledge and our involvement in the local community. And even within our committees, we hear matters that a board member would have more specific knowledge on regularly because of where they live, what they're involved with, and the ability to incorporate that into the discussion, I think, is important, because it's at the, you know, it's in the moment of when the presentation is made. Adding that discussion in at the full board kind of loses its point, because now you're asking people to be involved in a discussion that they did not see all the materials that were presented or the context. And that's really key to the issue. And, you know, at the end of the day, the power is the vote. It is not the discussion. And if somebody's discussion sways the committee, then they made the point at the right time and in the relevant place. So it's, you know, some of the citations may be for other groups, but for us, and what the point of the community board is and why we're appointed is, you know, is to participate and to bring, you know, our knowledge in there, which is why we spent extensive time talking about disclosing relationships. You know, that's the issue. It's not the discussion. It's the hidden relationships. And that also goes to, you know, the same thing with somebody chairing a meeting and having to recuse themselves. It all rolls into disclosure, but to preclude conversation, I think is not a good direction.
And speaking of disclosure, thank you, Carter, for putting in the chat the advisory opinion that requires it, so.
And it's not the advisory opinion, it's all of them.
It's all.
You can peruse them to your heart's content.
Oh, okay,
I will try and find the specific one, but that's where it would be located in. There are many different issues
okay,
covered.
but thank you for the link anyway. And I just want to share, one thing in Michael's email that really struck me personally was the comment that if he knew he couldn't participate in the business session, he wouldn't attend the meetings. And we have been really emphasizing for quite some time now, encouraging our members to show up at committee, to deal with things, when whether it's an application being presented or a presentation, and really, getting the work done on the committee level. And the thought that board members will avoid attending meetings because they feel that they won't have a sufficient opportunity to participate just struck me. So I just wanted to share that. Katie.
Well, I just wanted to say that just attending the committee meeting doesn't necessarily mean that I would comment either. I might just go to listen and learn, and I might participate or not. But what you're saying, sort of struck me. If that not feeling welcome might, even discourage that sort of quiet participation, because it's just less welcoming.
Yeah. So yeah, no, that really, thank you for that, Michael. It really just, it kind of brought this home in a particular way, that it's like, yeah, we don't want to do things that sort of undermine that goal. Donna.
Thank you, Susan, for commenting on that. Thank you.
I think the same thing struck me in Michael's comment as well. And, I agree with what Janine said, that most of the ones that I have gone to where I've attended other committee meetings, I'm able to speak at the business session, but priority is always given to committee members. So the benefit of speaking during the business session is that there is a back and forth, you're having a conversation. Public session is usually making a statement, asking questions, but there is no give and take exploration. And I think that's really important with other board members. And to your point, Susan, we've been trying to encourage people to do this so that we're not doing this all at full board, so that we can work this out in the committee. I do think that the committee members should be given priority if it gets, they know how their committees run, they know the specifics of certain things. And I think that should always be honored and respected. But having that back and forth amongst board members, I think is very important.
Yeah, just to reiterate, in no way do we want to limit a chair's ability to manage, the flow of the communication and making sure that it's orderly, and that, at committee members have a priority. It's yeah, that's an important part of this process as well. Jean, your hand was up and then you're down, so I don't know. I assume you don't have anything further to say on this, but we do have, wait a minute, is that an attendee? Oh, Jeffrey. Let me allow you to speak, because we do want to hear from our public as well. Absolutely. Whenever you go to say, please go ahead.
You can hear me?
Absolutely.
Okay, I basically I support this idea. I do think that institutional memory is important, and having members that may have served previously on the committee but are not on it anymore is very useful. What I would be concerned a bit about is an outsized proportional influence that a non-committee member might have over the committee members, and that would concern me a little bit. So too much time given to them speaking in the executive, I think, would be a bad influence. So I do think timers might be important. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much for letting me speak.
No, absolutely. And thank you. You show up at so many of our meetings, and I'm sure many of us, we all recognize you and appreciate the time that you take to be involved.
I appreciate the time that you all take. And so I feel I'm only helping a little bit, but thank you for letting me.
Thank you. You raise a valid question, a valid point, but that goes, I think, more to management and and the duties of a chair to manage their committee, to keep it running smoothly, to make sure that debate is a flow of ideas and not personalities. We can't regulate things down to the tiniest, at the tiniest level. So what, I think this new provision tries to do is make sure that there is increased participation, maximum flow of ideas. But we do always have to respect the abilities of our chairs, and our chairs are chosen for a reason. They're chosen because they've demonstrated, that their interest, not only their interest in a particular area, but that they've made a commitment over time. And I don't want to see any chair, deprived of that consideration and deference to a degree. But I think for the most part, we have, if anything, what we've seen, especially with the use of Zoom, is that we've had such increased participation, and it's been a wonderful thing. And we want to preserve that. So, eventually we will probably be going back to either hybrid or in person. And we want to preserve that because it's only, I know for me, it has a positive effect. Seeing people who are, not just on the committee. Okay, I
certainly have been able to attend a whole lot more meetings because of Zoom, so I do hope you can continue it. Thank you.
Well, as a non-board member, you will always have the opportunity, assuming that there is some hybrid, it's not, the rules don't apply to you. So you will always be able to attend whenever there's a link. So thank you again. I do not see any other hands. So I think I'm going to assume, unless anyone contradicts me, that we are going to leave the language in that section as is, and that we're going to, oh, Michael, please go ahead.
I just feel bad that Susanna is not here. So I'm asking Susan if she can communicate to Susanna the nature of our conversation. I think it would be good if one voice spoke for all of us to Susanna.
Thank you for pointing that out, but I have every intention of reaching out to her. I don't believe that somebody should just be surprised and, get a draft and say, oh, this is what we decided. She took the time not only to reach out to me, but to thoughtfully express her viewpoint, in an email. So I will be reaching out to her, and sharing this, and
I especially liked the reference to the exact page on Robert's rules. I did truly appreciate that. So,
yeah, go ahead, Katie.
If there's a particular concern that she has, or a particular situation that needs to be talked through, or needs some help, it would help. We could all help, brainstorm about it. I think we don't want to reject her concerns. We just hope maybe we could talk about a better solution to her concern if she wants to come through that. I'm not sure that the bylaws are the way, but there might be some other, you're talking about, Susanna was managing a very difficult series of meetings this year, and I think we can all appreciate that she was really under enormous pressure and stress. And if there's some way that we can help as a board, think about how to manage those situations, I'm sure that everyone is open to that kind of discussion and solution.
I think that is a great idea. I will incorporate that into my call to her. Because we don't want to see, we don't want to see a chair feel like their committee is being hijacked or something. But we have, bylaws are about it's a basic framework in how we operate, and it talks about basic principles, and it's it's not designed to deal with every specific situation. It's designed to allow us to function so that we have the flexibility to make choices within those specific situations. Carter.
Yes.
Yeah, where this comes in, and just to follow up on what Katie was saying, when issues get to the full board and then they get too complicated, right? And there's a committee vote and the board isn't happy with it, but recognizes perhaps more needs to be worked out. And in that particular case, a motion didn't carry, if I remember, and we sent it back to the committee to figure it out because it wasn't, the full board really wasn't the place in that particular time to sort it out. But it goes with the spirit of moving the discussion back to the committee. And it was sent back to have another executive committee to determine, to come up with some other resolve under a parameter or direction of the board. And that's difficult because it's contrary to the committee, but the board respects, the expertise of the committees to sort out these issues. But there is a direction, and that comes down to, the board chair sometimes has to act, or the board chair and committee chairs on things they don't agree with. That happens a lot, but you still have the responsibility of being the chair and conducting the meeting and what you say versus your actions as a chair and running it. And that comes up not often, but over the years, it comes up on occasion. And the place to have the discussions that just goes back to are the committees meetings where it's in context, because it gets out of context at the full board. So I certainly hear Susanna's frustrations, but there's also, how do we just efficiently handle things? And sometimes the board wants more detail and it gets sent back to the committee to handle it by a vote of the board. And if I remember, that's what happened in that particular case, and it's happened before.
Yeah,
Well.
and from time to time, we'll have situations that sort of stand out and they become, highly charged, and that will color the whole, the way somebody may look at this process. But we're here to deal with the overall, the big picture, the process as we expect it to run, in the more typical sense. And Katie made a good point. It's like, let's maybe address with her, specific concerns. It doesn't mean it rises to a bylaws issue, but it's something that absolutely we should be, offering anybody who needs extra support, that support. Jeffrey, your hand is still up. Do you have something additional? Or not? Oh, no, your hand is down. Okay.
Oops. Sorry.
That's quite all right. We all do it. Okay, so does anybody else have anything on this? I mean, it's clear to me that the committee would like to retain the language as it's written. And I will be definitely reaching out to Susanna and explaining what went on. Is there anything else? Now, we have a couple of other board members here. As I said earlier, thank you. Is there anything you would like to raise before this committee? I don't. Carter, you have your hand up, please.
Yeah, I'll let anybody else go first, but I had another.
Oh, okay. Just if anybody has something that they wanted to bring up that they haven't mentioned up to now, by all means, now's your time to do it. But I do not see anybody rushing to add anything. So Carter, go ahead.
Yeah, I had briefly mentioned this to you, but I had not researched it in the context, but it was a thought I had over the weekend, just in reading some of the different things. We don't have defined process for committee meetings. And I think that all committee meetings should include, obviously their agenda, old business, new business, and business session, because that's not explicitly stated, but unless it's otherwise disclosed beforehand, because not having a business session after a meeting sort of takes away the opportunity to discuss things. And if it's just decided, oh, we're ending the meeting, that's not particularly helpful if board members want to raise any issues, that the meeting just is closed out and ended. And so I just bring that up as a procedural thing. It should be apparent, but it's not. But I just put it out there procedurally because we should always create room for that to happen. So.
No, this is a good point. So what you're suggesting is that there be a requirement, a minimal requirement of certain elements that we have in our full board meetings also appear as part of every committee meeting. And it should be part of the agenda and stated, even if no time is spent on it, at least it's identified.
Right. And it may even include the opportunity for the public to speak, right? Because that's, can the public address the committee? And I just throwing that out there because that's sometimes raised, that people want to bring something up to a committee, but then you don't create space for it. Then how would you ever raise it?
You're absolutely right. I mean, this is a basic element of participation. If you don't set it aside and make it a requirement, you could have somebody say, oh, we're just moving forward.
Right. And then secondly, I also think that if the executive committee is contemplating something for example, and I'm thinking specifically of August, at an executive committee meeting, there should be an opportunity for the public to address the executive committee on the resolutions from any of the committees for consideration, just since the executive committee is acting in lieu of the full board that month, just as we have a public session in other months.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. John Bull.
Just wanted to applaud you guys for working on this. I know this is like super tedious. I don't really have much to say.
You have a good time though. Sorry.
I like it. No, I mean, it's honestly really interesting. I was reading through the work you guys have already done. I don't know. I guess this kind of maybe speaks to the opposite of what Carter was just saying. I was just concerned it read a little prescriptive, and I didn't know if that, obviously they're bylaws and by nature it is, but in terms of the runnings, I don't know, just because we can, parse down and maybe even put a script out that the committee chair should be following this language for each. I think it's just inviting just frustration for the public, or just, I don't know, it just becomes too pedantic is the word I thought in trying to review it a little bit. So maybe just saying an opportunity for the public to speak without trying to speak to, first you have to establish this is officially cool, I don't know, it just seemed way too prescriptive maybe in parts. I was seeing that the consequence of that in some of the communications going out, and how things were done, I think, by email and by electronic, as opposed to saying to send out a communication, because it doesn't allow for further innovation. I don't know, like how the votes are done, it's done by email, but maybe in some sort of way we could all just put our hands up, and then now I can't do that innovation that technology allows because it's not in the bylaws. So I would just caution against being too prescriptive and allow just it to work. Just because we can write something doesn't mean we should.
You are absolutely right. And I think that goes to the idea that we don't want to micromanage. I think what Carter was talking about is just the way our bylaws currently have, for our full board meetings, they mention that a full board meeting has to contain certain elements in order to make sure, and this is longstanding, so that we know that there's always an opportunity for the public to speak. We know that our committees will all be heard from. We're not telling them how to do it. We're telling them that you have a right to be heard.
But-
And I think that's what his concern is about.
I guess I've never heard a complaint that someone said they weren't heard. And so why put it in paper? Because we're just creating rules without the problem underlying it. I would see if it was brought up, if once in the last 5 years, when did we do this last, 5 years ago about? Someone said, hey, I didn't get a chance to speak there. Well, then it makes sense to put it down. Otherwise, we're just adding more words to rules to make it more complicated for the uninitiated to come in and bring themselves up to speed. I really, again, think we're just because we can write it, even if it makes sense what Carter's saying, we should caution against just doing it because we.
John, it's happened multiple times. It's called the power of end the meeting. When you're the host on a Zoom meeting and people have not had an opportunity to address the committees, who are committee members, they've just been told the meeting's over and it's done and ended without those elements being a part of the meeting. So that's why I raised it specifically.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, look,
Because
again,
if you're in
know-
person, it doesn't happen. Because you can't just end the meeting. And that's why if
Like in
hybrid,
Click.
yeah, in Click, if hybrid is an element, which it seems to be, and I don't disagree with you on the voting. The problem is the voting where we've discussed that is around elections where there has to be a recorded trail.
Yeah, when I teach, I take my attendance through Zoom and everything like that. I'm just saying, again, being way too prescriptive, not necessarily. Why wouldn't you just say record a vote in such a way that there is an electronic trail, and then that allows for innovation down the road versus
I think it says it now. I think we had amended it.
that's not how I.
Well,
Okay.
I tell you, John, if you
Yeah.
think the language is overly prescriptive, by all means, take a stab at it. And we look at things because we're a group and we sort of are just responding to one another. But your participation may bring something new to this. So if you have an idea, please, work on that language and share it with us, and I would take it very seriously.
Okay.
I
right.
I just don't want to put
I'm
things
just-
into words
Yeah.
for other people.
Okay. Okay.
And then
But again-
always just taking into account that we have certain requirements that are set for us.
Right. Right. I understand that. I'll try to find the language about the still requiring, I think, email versus what Carter, I think, was saying was allowed there. And if I'm correct,
Okay,
I'm just
that
saying-
sounds great.
leave room for growth, because I think just because we can meet on this, we shouldn't have to. And the better the rules are written, the less likely we'll have to do this. It shouldn't be 5 years just because, hey, it's about 5 years, we should probably get around to this. It should be for a reason. And that's
Absolutely.
what I want to make sure.
John, just the way it's put in there is if the district manager or somebody presents an alternative system to the executive committee can vote on it and accept it as the way elections are conducted. So it has an alternative, but it has to be presented so it contemplates anything in the future. It just needs to be brought and everybody agrees that that's how we're going to do it.
So the electronic voting should file the board or email address provided. We don't have to do that way because if there is some innovation, the exec committee can take it.
But it has to be done before the election period. That's the
Right.
key. Look, if we all agree on it as a board, it's fine. But the point is it has to be tracked somehow for elections, that there's a record of whatever the vote is. So.
Right. Right. Okay. Understand. Thank you again. Sorry for kind of.
Not at all. It's like it's that section is kind of dense. And then the section that Carter was referring to about, we can consider a new methodology is rather brief, but absolutely. Katie.
I wanted to go back to the committee agenda. I mean, we have the agenda for full board in the bylaws. And I don't see any reason not to put in at least a skeletal agenda for committees in the bylaws. Just make sure that you hit all of these topics. And I think, it could be a helpful roadmap for newer committee chairs as they come along, or, you know, over time. And did we close up the discussion on the August executive committee, which the second point that Carter made was allowing the public to speak at the August executive committee, because that's really because there's no full board for them to speak.
Absolutely. No, we haven't closed anything. So if you want to further comment on that, and yes, you know, we treat our August exec, it's in lieu of a full board meeting. And the idea therefore that we should have a participatory element of that is consistent with our contention that it is in lieu of a full board meeting. And I will, unless somebody is opposed to that, I will make, you know, an addition to reflect that.
Thank you. I think that's a very helpful suggestion.
Yeah, no, it definitely, I mean, in practice, we have been doing that, but it is something that it's appropriate that it be formally acknowledged, so that people feel that meeting is really an opportunity to be heard, and you don't have to wait until September.
Okay, sounds great.
Okay, let's see, any more hands? Katie, your hand can go down. And what I will be doing is taking all of these things and making adjustments, and I will circulate a new draft. It will not, I can't say it'll be ready in time for the board meeting, but if there's anything else anybody and by all means, you know, respond to me if you have anything you would like to see, and, you know, or comments on the changes that I will make. Michael.
One quick question. I don't remember if we discussed this last time. Are you planning to bring one complete package to the full board, or did we say you might bring it in sections, which would be easier to manage? I forgot how we resolved that.
I don't know that we resolved it absolutely.
That's why I forgot.
We definitely talked about it, and I don't know. It probably would make more sense to bring it in sections, but I haven't really, you know, I can't say that I gave it all that much thought, to tell you the truth.
So we might want to discuss that at our next meeting.
Yeah, I think so, because we don't have much time left. Jean.
I would suggest that we bring it together. Sounds like we will have to have a next meeting, but the key part is we got several board members who either sent comments or attended tonight. We can talk, I think when we send out a revised one to describe the like 6 or 7 changes or however many there are, and encourage people to come and discuss it. Because again, I don't want this type of detailed discussion happening at the board meeting. It's best at the committee level. And I think that's, you know, and you know, we'll give people advance notice and warning. And if we need to, we can have 2 committee meetings, but people also can reach out to you, because you had 2 people who did not attend tonight and sent you comments. So I think it's,
I mean,
worthwhile.
it is definitely easier to present this as a whole. And since we've been working through all the pieces, I don't think it will present the kind of real problems, because things have been hashed out at the committee level. Yeah, you know, Carter, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much hashing out at the committee you can do, but when it gets to the full board, what somebody's going to do is present a, you know, an amendment that needs to be voted on. What's important is that board member be prepared properly with whatever the amendment is, to put it up before the board. And that's where, you know, it just needs to be done. You can't stop people from doing that, but it needs to be done organized. So if somebody wants to challenge some part, is just poked forward and then the board votes on it and we move on. But I do think telling everybody to come here and discuss it is the right thing, because then that can be reiterated that it was discussed at length at the committee. And particularly since it doesn't seem to be that we're divided on issues, that should be communicated as well. But you know,
Well, I think
we're not gonna be able to stop somebody
No,
having an
and
issue with
it's not, and
something.
it shouldn't be anybody's goal to stop, you know, somebody who comes up with something that they want to. But, you know, we're creating, I'm trying to create as much opportunity for people as possible so that the level of detail and the time that we spend talking about this,
Mhm.
quite frankly, we could not duplicate at a full board meeting. So, I guess so. I think the consensus is that we will be trying to present this as a full package. Now, I will also mention that we have not for a while discussed our communications policies. I will not expect to present those at the same time because that is a standalone document. Although it is incorporated by reference into the bylaws. It's something I know we worked a lot on. I'm just bringing it up now. So if anybody hasn't looked at it in a while and wants to, I highly recommend that you do so that if there's something you do want to bring up on it, again, we can discuss it at a next committee level, next committee meeting. And I will, you know, turn this around and, you know, hopefully at our next bylaws meeting, people will be comfortable with the changes that were made. And then we can, as a committee, vote to recommend that our draft go to the full board. So how does that sound to everyone? I will take your silence as assent. Okay, fabulous. It's now 6:50. If nobody has anything, I am going to adjourn the meeting. And thank you all for your time and your concerns and your participation. And you will be hearing from me.
Thank you, Susan, for a good
Okay,
meeting.
take care, everyone. And of course, you know, quality of life starts in 10 minutes. It's always.
Thanks
it's
to all
always
of you
an
for
interesting
just
meeting.
working so hard.
Okay, thank you all everyone. Good night. Bye.